Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 25 of Superannuated Starman. If it isn't obvious, I am very, very sick. I'm getting over one of the worst colds I've had in my entire life.
Right.
I feel really bad, but I really wanted to do this podcast with you guys. And the voice you just heard was Cory Braucks.
That's false. I'm not here. I'm a ghost.
And also joining us is Chris Duerksen,
who is also a ghost, but he can't communicate because I have control of the Ouija board.
So Spyro is still coming, folks. We've not forgotten about it. I have everything ready to go. We have our guests lined up. We just need to get the people in place to do it.
End of the month.
What day are we doing that, Cory?
2 weeks from now, right? So it's what, the 26th?
26th. Yep.
Yeah.
But for now, we're going to spend about the next hour and a half, maybe longer, talking about some pocket monsters. I'm talking about Pokemon Yellow. It's celebrating its 25th anniversary this year, and I was planning on having a buddy of mine, Jonathan Rivera, coming on the show to talk to us, but unfortunately, due to some scheduling conflicts, he wasn't able. That said, he was able to find some time to talk to me, and we sat down to discuss Yellow. I will be releasing that episode as a companion piece to this one, and during that conversation, I kept calling it a 0.5, and it just sounds so awkward and doesn't make much sense. So instead, I've decided to call them side quests. In the future, if we have guests that can't make it on the show, hopefully I can catch them later on and still have a conversation with them, and it'll be a little side quest to the main episode.
With a Master Ball.
This game has some absolutely iconic music that has withstood the test of time. So sit back, relax, and enjoy as we go back to the 1990s and relive our memories of Pokemon.
Welcome back. So I'm doing the history today. I would like to tell you about Pokemon Yellow. Released in Japan on September 12th, 1998, and in North America on October 18th, 1999, Pokemon Yellow is the fourth game in the Japanese series, as well as the third in the international market. The series has been developed by Game Freak, formerly a fanzine publication of the same name, and now the flagship studio for the Pokemon game series. Founded by Satoshi Tajiri, the series came out after he was inspired by the Game Boy's link cable system and wanted a title he could collect and trade with, similar to his own hobby of insect collecting as a child. The original games of Red and Green took 6 years to complete and went on to spark the multi-billion-dollar franchise that Pokemon is today. Two other notable developers, Ken Sugimori and Junichi Masuda, were responsible for the game's art and music respectively. Sugimori was responsible for the lead character design and created the sprites and artwork for the original 151 Pokemon. Masuda composed the music for the original series as well as the music for almost every title to date. In 2022, he transferred from Game Freak to take on the role of Chief Creative Fellow at the Pokemon Company, which is a jointly owned subsidiary between Game Freak, Nintendo, and Bandai Namco. The game is a solitary remake of the popular Red and Blue original titles and is directly inspired by the anime. The player receives Pikachu as the default starter instead of being able to select one of the three original Pokemon, Charmander, Squirtle, and Bulbasaur. This is the first tie-in relating to the game relating the game to the anime as the protagonist Ash begins his adventures with Pikachu and his rival Gary Oak starts with Eevee. The game follows along the same formula of defeating the 8 Kanto region gym leaders and the Elite Four before the final showdown with rival Gary occurs for the title of the league champion. However, the series antagonist Team Rocket involve various battles with Jesse and James. These fights were not included in the original Red and Blue release and are inspired by Ash's adventures in the animated series. Furthermore, the game allows the players to obtain 3 original starters through in-game trades and events, as well as changing the pool version of restricted Pokemon. Ekans, Coughing, and Meowth, the signature Pokemon of Jesse and James, are not found in the game and must be traded from previous versions, as well as several others. Furthermore, Raichu, the evolution of Pikachu, is unattainable as Pikachu will refuse to evolve via Thunderstone. There are several other changes, including several sprite overhauls, bug fixes, and edits to move pools of certain Pokemon. Most notably, Charizard can learn the HM Fly in Pokemon Yellow, which it is previously unable to do.
Cory, thank you for putting that history together. I was so busy. I was absolutely
You know what? I
unable
wrote
to.
it, and it was much harder to read than it was to write. So a lot more respect for you.
That's definitely the case sometimes when I'm putting these histories together. So a couple other things I wanted to mention. Before it was Pokemon, it was Pocket Monsters. And before it was Pocket Monsters, it was Capsule Monsters. Based on the Gachapon capsules, also Ultraman's Capsule Kaiju. So one thing Cory didn't mention earlier was that originally there was a male and female protagonist. And that was something I literally just learned from talking to him before the episode started. It was in green, you said?
Yeah, so in the original manga, the original characters are red, blue, and green is actually the female protagonist of the 3.
So in Japan, it started off with red and green, and then blue came along later.
Yeah, so as far as version histories go, as I mentioned in the original rundown there, this yellow is the 4th game in the Japanese market, and that's because in Japan, the original games were red and green, and then blue came out later that year, and basically what blue did was it overhauled a lot of the original game's bugs. Like there was an issue where, for example, like with the gym leader Sabrina, sometimes if you lost to her, the game actually bugged out and it said that you won the fight. So it treated it as if you had beaten her, even though you might have whited out, and you could just bypass that gym entirely. So they fixed bugs like that, and then in the blue version, they did like a real like big visual overhaul too, where they changed a lot of the regions and they completely revamped certain dungeons, like the Seafoam Islands and stuff like that in the Cerulean Cave. And then they also just changed over like sprite visuals and things of that nature. And then Red and Blue became the releases in the international market, and they just scrapped green basically. And then so Yellow was the anime tie-in, and that became the 4th game in Japan, but we got it as the 3rd game internationally.
My understanding is that Yellow in Japan was actually a Game Boy game, whereas Yellow for us was a Game Boy Color game. Is that right? Or
I'm
am I
not sure. I know that it was a Game Boy Color game. You can see that in America. When you change zones, you can definitely see the color palette, the background changes. You know, for example, when you walk into like Pewter City or Cerulean, it becomes, gray or blue respectively.
Yeah.
So you can see that it's a Game Boy Color title in America. I don't know if it was a Game Boy game in Japan. I would have to look into that.
I believe it was a Game Boy game, but it was the last game released for the Game Boy. And they basically, I'm not completely sure about this, but like it was very minimal effort for them to have it on Game Boy Color and just having the little splashes of color.
Yeah, they basically just had to like wash the background with a palette swap. So,
but also, did you mention? Like I said, I'm pretty sure it was the last Game Boy game released, and I think it's the 2nd highest selling Game Boy game of all time, behind Red and Blue.
I did not look at the original sales. I do know that as far as the market goes, the original Gen 1 releases, which is red and blue and green in Japan, and the international market combined are over $20 million in 1998 alone. So it's a pretty big series.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of cash. I would have imagined that Tetris would have been the #1 game because that was a pack-in with the original Game Boy.
Does that count as selling though?
It did as far as Wii Sports goes.
So a little bit of more information. This is something I discovered while watching various YouTube episodes and retrospectives on it. And this is talking about the concept behind Pokemon. Originally, it wasn't as friendly of a game as it is now, where the trainer is friends with the Pokemon. And in some concept art, there were shopkeepers that had Pokemon held in cages that you could purchase with money. And there was even a sprite with a trainer that had a whip.
And
Hey,
you
can I
know,
just-
sorry to cut you off, Chris, but I will say that even in like the anime and the manga, they do portray kind of the darker side of Pokemon occasionally, where you'll see people like, especially Team Rocket, like they just stick them in cages and they mistreat them and things of that nature. So it doesn't really show up as far as family friendly like game time goes, but it has been touched on occasionally.
I just wanted to chime in about the best-selling games. I'm looking at 2 different sites. One of them has Tetris as the top selling. One of them has Pokemon Red, Blue, Green as the top selling. One of them has Red, Blue, Yellow lumped together as one of the top sellings. So I have no idea.
So the statistics I'm looking at, red, blue, green, and yellow all combined have sold over 46 million copies. Tetris has sold 35 million.
Yeah, but that's kind of cheating because I mean, technically, aren't red, blue, green, yellow technically 4 different?
They're the same.
Yeah,
They're the same
it's
game.
weird.
They're just different variations, I guess.
Yeah.
So if you want to, I mean, because like I was saying originally, like these games are kind of packaged in the same release time because the whole thing was to encourage trading and to encourage collecting. So
Yeah.
The whole concept is that red has a certain amount of exclusive Pokemon, and then green would have the others, and then you're supposed to get a friend and hook up the link cable and trade Pokemon around, and that's how you're supposed to max out your Pokedex. And it's further complemented by the fact that there are certain Pokemon in this game that are in every game that are trade evolutions. So, like for example, like if you have a Haunter, you can't get a Gengar unless you trade it to somebody, or a Kadabra to an Alakazam, or a Machoke to a Machamp. Like they're just certain things where they literally encourage trading, and they actually restrict it in certain ways by saying, okay, like you can't really get the full effect of this game without having a buddy.
As the group's Pokemon master, can you speak for all the Pokemon fans out there and say, how do you guys feel about that? Because from an outsider's point of view, that sounds like such a BS system where, like, in order to get the full experience of the game, you have to buy both copies of it, which are pretty much the exact same game, and you have to trade.
I personally like it because no matter what, you can play the full game, right? Like you get to look at the game and say, okay, like this is the one I want because these are the ones that appeal to me. Like when my brother and I got these games as kids, I got red and he got blue, and I picked red because it had like the cooler Pokemon in it that I wanted at the time.
Right.
And we could trade because we're siblings, but even if we couldn't, we still had the same game, right? Like you still get to play through the 8 gym leaders, and you get to play the 4 people at the the Elite Four at the end, and you
exactly.
you get to play through the game, right?
It is the exact same, pretty much, right?
Yeah, it's every release, whether it's red and blue or gold and silver or ruby and sapphire, like they're all the identical campaign. It's just that the Pokemon exclusives are different. So you're buying a copy of the game and you're getting the same feel all the way through. It's just there's different Pokemon in each one.
So you had red, your brother had blue. Did you guys have your own Game Boys, or did you share one?
We had our own Game Boys.
Well, let's talk about that in our next segment where we talk about our childhood memories.
Fair enough.
But I do want to weigh in real quick on that comment about how you feel about having to buy two different versions. I think that initially it wasn't a nefarious plot to maximize profits. I think it was about encouraging people to get together and trade because you had to do essentially face to face with the link cable. But I think nowadays it's not necessary to have so many iterations of the exact same game.
Now,
Yeah.
I will make the counter argument that I don't think it hurts the market to have two different versions, because now with Nintendo Switch Online, you don't have to meet anyone face to face. You can go on to like Reddit or something and say, "Hey, I'm looking for this Pokemon," and you just trade your game IDs, and then you can trade that way. Like you don't need both copies of the game still.
Oh, you don't need that anymore. So it's not like
Yeah, there's no link
exclusive
cable anymore. You just
Oh,
log
right,
on.
right.
You say, okay, I have Pikachu because I have the red version, and I have Squirtle because I have the blue version or whatever.
Oh, see,
And then you
I
go
thought
on to the internet and say, hey, trading this for this.
I thought it was deeper than that. I thought it was like like this version had such and such legendary, and this version had the other
and
legendary.
there are legendary exclusives. But
So
you'll find
so if you
that
want both of them though, like, can you still trade, or
yeah,
are you
you
stuck?
can trade for your legendaries. Yeah, they're not restricted to the game.
Now, if you trade yours away though, does that mean obviously it's gone? And
yeah, it's gone. But it also, if you catch a Pokemon, it's registered in your Pokedex, and it counts as you having captured it. So
Right.
if you want to max out your Pokedex, all you have to do is at some point own that Pokemon. So if you don't care about having that Pokemon, you can just catalog it and trade it away. And a lot of people do that because they really don't care about legendaries. They care more about like shinies and perfect IV stats, and that's something we could talk about later in the show as well. But there's like a lot of other reasons to trade away stuff.
Oh
So when
man,
we get into like the modern playthrough, I will explain more about like all the nuances of this game.
please do.
Absolutely, please do. But for now, let's take a break.
Okay.
When we come back, we're going to talk about our memories of Pokemon Yellow. Welcome back, everybody. So this is our segment where we talk about our childhood memories of Pokemon, and I'm expecting to catch some flack over it, but I will begin by saying that I never played the original Pokemon games as a kid. In fact, the first time I ever played a mainline Pokemon game from start to finish was Pokemon X on the 3DS. And
You're
since
a monster.
then, I've only completed one other Pokemon game, and that was Shining Pearl for the Switch. So I don't have any memories of this game. This was in 1998. I was a junior. I was in junior high. And while Yellow hadn't quite come out yet, Red and Blue had. And I was keenly aware of it because one of the people in my friend group was obsessed with it. And Chris, you know her. Her name was Katie Hedrick. And she would make that
oh boy
during recess and run around. I owned a Game Boy original at the time, but I wasn't using it for Pokemon. I was playing games like Ninja Turtles and Castlevania. I don't know when those came out specifically, but those are games I owned. For me, during recess at that time, I was playing Magic the Gathering. So,
which is its own form of crack.
You know how cool that makes me. So, ladies, just be easy on my DMs, please. Please. So that's all I've got. Chris, what do you have for your childhood memories?
Well, I actually have no experience with this game either as a child. And as a matter of fact, this is my first time playing any Pokemon game besides Pokemon Go, which Cory has told me does not
Who's
count.
the monster now?
I know, I was just kidding. But yes, I've never played any Pokemon game. And when I first became aware of Pokemon, I think I was in 5th grade. And so, and it was just a cartoon. The cartoon came out. It was on every morning before school. And I used to watch it because there was nothing else to watch. But I'll admit I enjoyed it. but I was too cool to actually. I thought I was too cool to actually care about Pokemon or show any interest in it at all. It just didn't really stick to me. Also, I did not have a Game Boy, and then on top of that, nobody I knew, anybody, liked Pokemon or played Pokemon or had the Pokemon. Nobody I knew played the game, had played the card games. I didn't even know anybody that watched. I don't even remember Katie doing the Pikachu thing. Like I don't even remember her getting into it.
Oh,
And
it happened. Trust
but
me.
yeah, but yeah, and then junior high started. Magic the Gathering was gaining steam, and nobody cared about Pokemon after that. And it just, I think we just kind of, I think we were just right outside the target window for that game for Pokemon. So I think we just barely missed the bus on that. And the first time I did anything related to Pokemon was playing Super Smash Brothers in your basement on New Year's Eve in 1999. And even to this day, Pikachu is still my main for Smash Brothers.
That's really my first exposure to Pokemon as well, outside of, kids, that just
Pikachu is
enjoyed
your
it.
main though, like
Yeah, I mean,
weird.
yeah.
Yeah, it should be Captain Falcon, but we're not talking
No,
about Smash.
nope.
So, Corey, why don't you dive into your memories of Pokemon?
Fox main. No, anyway, so as far as Pokemon Yellow goes, I actually played it as a rental, which is insane if you know how this game works because there's only one save file and getting a rental is either like you start the game over again and completely wipe out someone's little memories of Pokemon, or you just pick up like whatever weird game they had going at the time. Of course, I completely demolished their save.
Oh, you
Of
were talking
course,
about
of
how
course.
how important trading was. Like getting a rental, like that's like getting a trade of all their Pokemon all at once.
Yeah,
Come
which
on.
is fine, but like you also have to trade your own stuff to them to get something out of it. But anyway, so I had red and my brother had blue, and I am a terrible sibling. And so I was really not aware of I was aware of it, but I really wasn't thinking about the fact that when you trade Pokemon, um, basically that's a permanent thing. And when you create a new game, it's also a permanent thing. So I, in an attempt to get every starter in red and blue, wiped out my brother's save file and traded over all the starters to myself. And I traded over all the starters to get him a set as well. So I'm not a complete monster. But I think he was on like the fifth gym and I just wiped out his game. Like,
Oh man, you were the bane of every big brother out there.
Yes.
to this day I have not lived it down. It comes up in conversation probably like once a year. So but yeah, so I was like, hey, like Kyle, like look, I got us all the Pokemon. He goes, oh cool, what happened to my game? Like, oh yeah, I had the like you hey look, you've got a Rattata. Like,
Did you never learn the trick with cloning Pokemon?
no, I didn't learn the trick with cloning Pokemon. I didn't really bother because we had two games, so you could always like, just get whatever you're looking for. Um Yeah, I had it as a kid. I was swept up in the whole because I'm a few years behind you guys, so I was probably like just getting into middle school when this was becoming like a popular thing. And like Chris said, like the cartoon was on Toonami at the time, I believe, and then the trading card game came out, which was like a real popular thing alongside Magic the Gathering, as you were talking about. It was kind of that like era of like mixing video games and physical items in the market. But yeah, like Pokemon was a big thing for me, and it was a really cool game. And it, like we were talking about in the history, like it really did inspire a lot of like cooperation. And we had a link cable, and I had friends that had the game as well. So like I ended up getting most of the Pokedex done by trading with friends and things of that nature. And it was just like a really big, popular, cool thing for us.
That was one of my questions was what was the playground scene like for this game?
Yeah, Pokemon was crazy as far as like, because you're talking about like from third to fifth grade, maybe, depending on, what year you were talking about as far as Pokemon goes. So, like, it was a pretty big thing. And, the cartoon was out and, like you had all these like cool monsters that, could breathe fire and fly and stuff. And it was just this big fun thing for kids. And Nintendo really like went hard on the marketing as well. I remember like there were plushies and there were like, the bedspreads and stuff and comforters and like even tennis shoes and things of that nature. Like it was pretty big like Pokemania by, like early 2000.
Were there any crazy rumors spreading around about Pokemon at that time?
I don't think there were any rumors. I mean, other than like, okay, so there's two things. There was a rumor as far as the game goes that you could like capture Mew if you like got the Pokedex finished. And I don't remember if that's even true. I think to get Mew, which is the 151st Pokemon, you have to have like attended like the Nintendo like international thing they did in Japan where like you got the game code to put it in. I don't think you could
What?
just get it like through. Yeah, there are certain Pokemon that are like exclusive that like happen with like these big events that Pokemon and Game Freak and stuff do.
And they were very expensive events and
I
required a
don't
lot of money.
expensive
And
or not, but they like you just had to be like in Japan.
There are some ways to do it, but you have to manipulate the game. Like there's step-by-step tutorials
Yeah,
that
like there's ways to like cheese it. I know you could use like a Game Shark to like hack it into.
sure,
Um,
sure.
but there was also a way. There was this rumor like, oh, you could do this, like getting you in the game. Like you had to go over here and like had to force this event to happen, and then like it ended up being like the missing no file, which would like corrupt your game basically. So that was like the other like taboo thing.
The rumor that I had heard was Mew was under the truck, and that may have been a like April Fool's joke.
I do remember. Yeah. Okay. Yes, I remember this now. Like it was the truck on like I think it was like the docks to the SS Anne or something.
It's something like that. It's like the only vehicle in the game that you
Yeah.
see. So
but I
my
take it
last
it's not there.
no,
No, it's not there. It was all BS.
so my last question is, what color was your Game Boy Color?
My Game Boy Color was like a tealish color.
Oh, I have one in box, so that's that color.
Yeah, it was like a solid teal. Like it wasn't like the see-through one that you can get.
Those are so cool though. And actually John and I talked about those at length, just talking about how the 90s had that translucent plastic look
Oh
on
yeah,
so many
remember
different
Yes.
things.
the iMacs? Like Apple had that
Yep.
whole run of computers that had like the cool. It was like orange
Neon
and blue and purple and like they were all like that see-through,
neon
plastic
color,
color. Yeah, like
bright.
the '90s
Yeah.
was a lawless wasteland for a number of reasons, but they did have a lot of fun things.
Definitely. Was there anything else you wanted to discuss before we move on?
I think we covered a lot of the like unless you want to get into like conversations about gameplay and stuff. Like I think we covered a lot of like the childhood memories.
Oh,
All
and
right.
for everybody listening out there, I do want to throw in there, like, we're talking about childhood playground memories of this game. To be fair, like, when I said, like, nobody I knew played Pokemon, Sean and I went to a very, very small school. So when I said, like, my world of knowing people was very small, too. So, like, if it wasn't popular with the 20 kids that you were in a class with, like, that was your whole world pretty much for us.
Oh yeah, my school had, I mean, my middle school had several hundred children, and then by the time I got into high school, it was like upwards of 1,000. So
Our entire school, K through 12, wasn't even several hundred children.
So Chris is
So,
exaggerating when he says 20 people. It was actually a graduating class of 32.
ooh,
That's how small our class was.
I think my first period had 32 people in it.
and also up until 5th grade, the elementary schools were even divided, so those classes were even half the size. So very small elementary.
Yeah,
Anyway, does that cover the normal times the children?
I think so.
Wait. One quick question. Cory, did you beat it as a kid?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
I think we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to discuss replaying Pokemon Yellow today.
All right, so we are talking about this, playing it as adults in 2023. And first off, I'd like to give an update where I am with Pokemon currently. I mentioned I played Pokemon Go, and I've been playing that since day 2, and I still play it. I'm not obsessed with it necessarily, but I've definitely gotten some eye rolls while trying to catch something in the grocery store.
Whatever. It's a fun, casual thing.
Dude, oh man, when that game came out, it was everywhere.
It was Pokemon Mania 2.0 when it came
And
out.
yeah, and the eye rolls that I got were mostly from my wife. And every time we were driving down the street, we'd see like there'd be like a group of kids, or not even kids, like grown adults walking with their phones out, staring down their phones. And my wife's like, "What are they doing?" I'm like, "They're playing Pokemon." She's like, "Shut up." No, I'm like, "No, seriously, they're playing Pokemon."
I can actually comment on this. Being in the military during that time, it was actually so bad that there were people that were going into restricted areas trying to capture Pokemon.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Even stateside, like I remember there were like lawsuits and stuff because people would be like trespassing, like, "Oh, I have to get this."
Yeah.
Like, there's a Snorlax behind your fence, sir. Like, no, like stay out of my yard, or like stay out of this business that you're trying to get into the parking lot of.
But yeah, so I still play Pokemon Go. Hit me up in Discord if you want my friend code. But but I've still not played any Pokemon Go. Any Pokemon game outside of Go up until now. But my son has recently gotten into Pokemon. He's 6 years old, and he's gotten into it hard. He loves going through my Pokédex on Pokemon Go, and we got him this 2-inch thick book that has all the Pokemon in it and all their stats and their types, and he loves just flipping through it and having me read it to him, and he just started watching the cartoon, which I believe is that Indigo League? Does that?
Dude, I mean, Indigo's
No
the
idea.
original game, like the original.
Yeah,
series is
yeah, exactly.
Okay, so he's on like Netflix or whatever.
Yeah, we're on
Okay.
Netflix, and he's watching the Indigo League. It's the same cartoon episodes I used to watch 27 years ago.
He's on the road to Viridian City.
But yeah, playing video games isn't really his thing, but he loves. We got him a little Pidgeot and Scyther action figures,
That's cool.
and he loves playing with the action figures and having little Poke battles, and he assigns like our dogs like like they're dog type Pokemon, and and they have this attack and quick attack and
Kids in the backyard. Rufus, go use bite attack. No,
and
not
here's
on
where
the mailman. Shit.
and here's a perfect transition where we can compare Pokemon to dog fighting, but I'm not going there. But anyways, so yeah, that's kind of what's going on with Pokemon currently. So when this game got brought up, I was really looking forward to playing it, mostly because of all the new Pokemon interest kind of flooding into my life from every direction. And with his interest in Pokemon, I asked to borrow Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu from Sabrina.
And so really quick, I should mention that we didn't really talk about this in the history, but Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu is the Pokemon Yellow remake.
That's what I was going to mention.
Their 20th anniversary, basically. So they completely remade the game. And if you get the Let's Go Eevee version, you are officially Gary Oak. So I want all of you people to
That's
know
what I
that
was wondering.
if you bought Let's Go Eevee, you're Gary Oak and
hate
you're a
you.
monster.
But so we borrowed Let's Go Pikachu, and Gibbs and I started playing it just a few days before Cory suggested that we play this. So I was sitting there playing Let's Go Pikachu with Gibbs and watching him play, and I'm mostly just sitting there so I can read everything to him and explain what he needs to do, and then when I fire up Pokemon Yellow for the first time, right away I was like, I've been here before. So that was actually a really cool experience that I don't think I'll ever.
I've been here before in a much more HD friendly environment.
Yeah, but I thought that was just so great, and I got a nice little chuckle out of that coincidence. And also, like I said, he started watching the old cartoon, which I did not know Yellow was a remake of Blue and Yellow, but Yellow basically just incorporates the cartoon. So the cartoon that I'm familiar with and now he's familiar with, your Yellow is like, well, you're following the storyline of the cartoon basically. You're Ash, which I had no idea about, which is why I named my guy Scoochie instead of Ash.
Sean, what did you name your guy? Did you just name him Red?
Red.
Okay, yeah. So
You
the
named him Red?
the original ones are
Yeah.
red and blue, and then you have like a drop down list where it's like Ash or Gary or whatever you could name them. I named mine Dad, which amuses me to no end because it's like Dad caught a Pokemon, which is stupid.
I got a real quick question about Let's Go. Does that also have all the Team Rocket in it as well?
I believe it does. You'd have to ask Chris.
Gibson has not gotten that far yet.
Okay.
Like I said, video games aren't really his thing yet, so he's kind of he hasn't even gotten to the first gym yet. So
I googled it, and yeah, Jesse and James are standing there in their 3D glory in Let's Go Pikachu. So it's just completely a remake.
But anyways, so between all that, watching the cartoon with Gibbs, him getting into the books and everything, and seeing the excitement from a 6-year-old, and watching the cartoons and playing Yellow and playing Let's Go, I feel like I'm getting the full experience of Pokemon that I missed out on in the 90s. And one thing I do really want to mention, in the game, Gary is a complete... I think everybody everybody hates Gary, right? I mean, like, there's no...
Smell you later, Ash.
But in Let's Go Pikachu, they sell him as your childhood best friend. You know, you guys were best buddies since birth, and he's your best friend and your friendly companion, and he's your motivation, and you guys motivate each other.
So I will say that in the manga or whatever you want to pronounce it, Red and Blue and Green are all friends, and they're on their adventures together. And so it's the cartoon where Gary Oak is the spoiled rotten grandson of Professor Oak, and Ash is this colossal screw up that is always trailing behind Gary, and they're really big rivals because of that. So
right. But no, I'm just saying, but I think it's funny how now, instead of somebody that you want to throat punch, he's supposed to be your best buddy.
They're Pokemon revisionists.
Yeah. But to move on to actually playing the game, when we were trying to figure out what game to play next, Sean and I, our schedules were kind of busy. And Cory was like, oh, let's play Pokemon Yellow. And right away, Sean and I shared our concern about, being such a time sink. And you're like, oh, there's people that can beat this game in 4 hours. You should be able to do it.
No, I told you that you can beat it in 4 hours, and the world record is under 2.
Yeah, but you're like, yeah, somebody can beat it in 4 hours. You should be able to knock it out pretty quick. And I am 50 hours into it and still only...
Okay, so for the listeners at home, I will also say that, number one, I beat the game in 6 hours, and I think Sean probably knocked it out. Yeah, and Sean, you knocked it out in less than 10?
Oh, no, sir.
Okay.
No, he spent, what'd you say, 40? 36?
35 hours.
Okay, so Sean beat it in 35 hours.
So yeah,
Chris is at 53 and is only halfway through because he keeps changing teams.
I have 6 badges now. I just got my 6 badge, right, Sean? Because I said 5 badges before. I just got a 6th one when we were talking.
Yeah, if you beat the psychic type, that's Sabrina's gym.
And then I beat the bug gym right after that.
Koga.
Yeah. But regardless, I think this game is fantastic. Like I feel like I definitely missed out as a kid because I came into this game with the impression it was going to be a very simple catching game, kind of like Pokemon Go.
And that's why I told you that Go does not count as a real game.
It doesn't. You're totally right because it's Go is just a super dumbed down version of Pokemon. It uses the same rock paper scissors battle method and everything, but I was not expecting a game with the puzzles and being locked behind gates and dungeons and paths that you had to open up, and the game progression very much has the that classic. You need to go here, but you can't get there because this is in your way, and you can't get this out of your way unless you go and get something that you need to find from over here.
It's kind of like Legend of Zelda feel, where like you need the thing to open the thing, or like you need the boots to walk on the lava or whatever.
Exactly. I was totally. I was totally going to mention like as far as like the world building everything, it's great, and like the NPCs that you run into and the little buildings and the towns, and you get little glimpses of their little lives in their cities and stuff, and it really builds a great RPG experience. And I can easily compare this to like Link to the Past with like pop-up battle elements, and I think it's great, and I really like the battle system, and obviously they're doing something right because they're going on like 30 years of doing it. And when battles pop up, I think I've only ran from like maybe 10 battles. I go through them all because
like all the random ones.
Yeah, I don't run.
God,
I mean,
it's taking you so long.
Yeah, but my Pokemon are strong.
Are they?
Yeah, my Duck Trio just rolls over everybody.
Okay.
But I'm also the type of guy that gets attached to my party. Like, it took me up until like my 4th badge or 5th badge until I finally put Pikachu in the storage box.
I don't know. Banked Pikachu.
Oh, don't say that.
I did too.
Am I supposed to keep him out the whole time?
Well, Sean, you banked yours because you picked up a bunch of like the OP legendaries to roll through the game.
Yeah,
I got my Pikachu. I got a Zapdos. Sorry, no, not Zapdos. The what's the EV? Electric EV?
Oh, Jolteon.
Jolteon. Yep, I got Jolteon. And when Jolteon finally learned Thundershock, I was like, well, I don't need Pikachu anymore because Jolteon was, I mean, like, seemingly better. Plus, with my experience with Pokemon Go, I know that Pikachus are kind of garbage Pokemon. Well, at least I assume that because of Pokemon Go. I don't have any other experience, so I'm just making an assumption here. But anyways, that was a rant. So yeah, I don't really run from many battles. I kind of try to keep my party as the same as much as possible. So it took me a while before I finally did move Pikachu into storage. But that's the one thing as far as like changing my party up. Like I liked how they did a good job with the progression, because like when you get to a new area and you see new types of Pokemon popping up, you don't need those Pokemon right away. But if you throw them in your party and start leveling them up right away, by the time you need them, they'll be ready to go. So it just kind of felt like it grows at a very natural pace. You know what I mean? Like when you run into the bug Pokemon everywhere, you've got plenty of time to actually level them up before they are the ideal counters for which, I mean, that's a bad example. I didn't level up any bug Pokemon.
I mean,
but as far as like, like when I finally got Haunter, Haunter was a good counter for fighting types, right? And then by the time I got to the gym where the fighting gym, basically, my Haunter was able just to roll through everybody like as a champ, and I didn't have to like spend a lot of time going back and leveling up my Haunter. It just progressed naturally by adding him into my party and trying to use them as much as possible. And one thing I really liked about the game is the fact that, like, yeah, but from playing Pokemon Go and from, I don't know, just playing games in general, like not all Pokemon are going to be equal, but in this game you still feel kind of like every Pokemon could be valuable somehow, and
It was a lot more balanced.
yeah, it really is. Like I said, like, and I mean, if we want to talk about parties, my current party is I've got Charmeleon, Haunter, Jolteon, Mr. Mime, which yeah, I joked when I told you guys about getting Mr. Mime. I was like, oh yeah, he's gonna be my main. He is like,
Mr. Mime's a
and
good Pokemon.
yeah, he's great. Which yeah, I mean, and here's the nice thing about playing this compared to playing Pokemon Go. Like in Pokemon Go, you will never use a Mr. Mime except unless you want to look like a goofball by throwing him in a gym. But in this game, Mr. Mime he's my enforcer. Like he's the one that knocks out everybody. And then I've got a Doug Trio, which again in Pokemon Go, I would never use a Doug Trio for anything. Doug Trio is my second best Pokemon in this game. And dude, that dig attack is just brutal. And then I've got Gyarados as my sixth. And then I'll kind of swap around a couple of them here and there. Like I've definitely spent some time leveling up a Machamp. Or sorry, not a Machamp. I can't get a Machamp. A Machoke.
Joke.
And I've leveled up what else? I can't remember. But yeah, that's pretty much rounds up my party. But yeah, I was really impressed with the world building as far as also like I said, I wasn't expecting puzzles and stuff to have to go around. There's that one gym. Sean, you got it still pulled up, right?
Yeah.
What gym was the what did you say is Saffron, the psychic gym where you had to like teleport around?
Yes.
Correct.
Saffron.
Yeah. And
Sabrina as the gym leader.
Yeah, and also what's the big building, Siphon Company or something like that?
Silphco.
Silphco, that's what it is. Like I got
with
lost
like
in there.
14 floors, yeah.
Yeah, and the hidden Team Rocket base that with all the little chips challenge
Underneath Celadon, yes.
Yeah.
The Team
Yeah,
Rocket hideout.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting any of that stuff in this Pokemon game, especially for a Game Boy game. I mean, like,
Yeah.
this is a Game Boy game. I'm like, I mean, I never expected to put 50 hours into a single Game Boy game. Like, I don't even put that many hours into current games.
And, it's a massive RPG. I think
that's
one of the things
really
that
is.
Really.
So, yeah, this game deserves a lot of kudos for. And I mean, and obviously those kudos also need to be shared with red, green, and blue as well, because yeah, what they were able to cram into this game is just amazing. And I haven't even beaten it yet, and I do plan on beating it because I'm thoroughly enjoying it.
And it's one that you might actually be able to finish.
Yeah, unless I lose my way again.
No, I mean, well, that does happen in the earlier ones, but I think you'll put enough time in, like, without setting it down for a month and a half, or you'll remember what you're doing.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, and Sean did say that there's 8 badges. I've got 6 of them, so I mean, I hope I'm close to the end. Right?
You are, because the Elite Four is one big gauntlet. So after you get the 8 badges, you'll get to the Elite Four, and that's like one big room that you have to get through, basically. So you don't have to worry about like traveling across the country to do all 4 of those.
Awesome. Oh, and speaking, this was also like, this game has a bicycle that you get, and you can ride a bike to help get around faster.
I mean, don't even want to talk about that damn bicycle.
By the way, Sean has like 35 hours in this game. He didn't have the bike for the first 30. So that's also why it took him so long to play.
Yeah, but what's my excuse though? Because I mean, I got the bike pretty quick, and then as soon as I got that bike voucher, I remembered exactly where to go back to turn it in. And the first thing I did was got the bike. I'm like, oh, finally I can walk around faster.
I was so mad. People told me, talk to everybody, talk to all the NPCs. Don't leave anybody unchecked. And I was like, no, I got to run through the game. I got stuff to do, So the reason that Cory did the history for this, and the reason that I had to just hammer through this game was I had my midterm exams coming up. So I had 4 exams in 1 week, and I just did not have the time. And I missed it. I missed the bike. What was it? A certificate or
Yeah, so you get a voucher from
a voucher?
Pokemon like fan club president.
Is there a
But-
way to run before that, or are you just permanently
No,
stuck walking?
not in this version, unfortunately.
Okay, because
in later games, your mom will give you a pair of running shoes like almost immediately, and you'll be able to go faster. But in this version, being Generation 1, there's no such benefit. And that's one of the things we can talk about too, is the limitations in this game.
But anyways, I can't remember why I brought up the bike. Oh, just because of the fact that, I mean, this is a Game Boy game that has a mount system, basically, that I just thought was cool. And this game is super impressive to me in pretty much every way. And like I said, I have not played any other Pokemon games. I probably will sometime down the road. So I don't know what all the current, like, I know there's a lot of flaws that people have said in this game. There's a lot of,
I do want to touch on, like, you keep bringing up Pokemon Go. I think one of the biggest differences that you can say from like a combat perspective is, so if you've ever played Pokemon Go, you get one attack and then you have like your power up ability. And it's essentially you're just spamming the button on your phone as fast as possible, and the other guy in front of you is doing the same thing, and you kind of just melt away. And this one is a turn-based combat, and you have 4 abilities, and you have a certain number of like power points, which limits how many times you can use the move before you have to heal. And it is very much like this tactical RPG versus just a spam fest, basically. You know,
Yeah.
so like as far as like you playing Pokemon Go, this is, I would think, night and day, where you're having to like make
Completely.
decisions, and like you have items where you have to heal on the fly and things of that nature.
And also the fact that, like, in Pokemon Go, every attack does damage. In this game, it seems like only half the attacks do damage.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that. Like,
the other attacks don't do damage; they do status effects.
yeah,
They
like
put your,
I didn't even
they
think
put your
about,
opponent to sleep, or they increase your defense, or they decrease your opponent's accuracy, or
paralyze or freeze,
Yeah.
or confuse
Confuse.
them. Yeah, confusion
Yeah.
sucks.
oh man, my Mr. Mime confuses everybody.
so Chris, was there anything else you wanted to talk about before I jump in?
No, please do. Like I'm just I was just gonna say, like, I haven't played any of the newer ones, and I know this one has some flaws, but man, for 1999, and well, and I mean, if you count Red and Blue, this game was amazing.
So I've got some opinions, and they're not all as glowing as yours are. My disclaimer is that I have a lot of thoughts on this game, and it's difficult to get into if you have no nostalgia for this game, which I have none. And I don't want to come across as if all I'm doing is crapping on the game. It's not that I don't like the Pokemon franchise. I really do. I played through, like I said, Shining Pearl, and I really enjoyed it. But I had some major problems with Pokemon Yellow.
Such as,
So from the very beginning, I was really stoked. I was like, all right, I already know which starter I'm going to pick. I'm going to pick Charizard because I think he's the coolest of the three. And I start the game up, and that's not even an option. I had no idea that yellow was a retelling of red and blue.
Okay, so you kind of got hoodwinked by not being able to pick your starter. That's fair.
Right. Which I mean, I admit I was also that because everybody makes a big deal about, oh, what's your favorite starter? When yellow, that choice is taken away from you. But I mean, like I said, I went into this game without any predispositions, and I just kind of went with it. So, and plus, I mean, and to be fair, you can get those to starters within what, an hour of actually playing.
That's not the point. The point is, I wanted to start with my Charmander so that I could evolve him all the way up to Charizard, and that was going to be my boy. But that wasn't the case. I got stuck with Pikachu, and I want to talk about bad game design. So the very first gym that you encounter is in Pewter City, and that's Brock. And his Pokemon are ground and rock type, which are immune to electric moves.
Yes.
Which
I have
mandatory starter is Pikachu, and this is still really the tutorial portion of the game.
Which is why before you went in there, I said, make sure you catch yourself a Mankey.
So I had to come back and ask you what to do because the Pokemon I had just were not cutting it. I had I don't even know the names of all of them. I had like my
You had
Pidgey.
your bugs.
Yeah, I had a couple bugs. I had the bird, the Pidgey, and I had Pikachu, who was useless. I had no one that was able to stand up against it's Geodude and Onyx.
Yep.
Yeah. And
you had no way to defeat the might of the Rock Man.
Compared to red and blue, I've heard yellow is considered the hard mode just because of that.
Well, Onyx has the move Bind, which it's just
incredibly annoying.
Freezes your Pokemon out for like 3 to 4 moves, and I think damages them.
It does, yeah. You get wrapped.
So I went through, and I reset because I was not about to pay him for losing to him. Which, that's another mechanic that we didn't even talk about. In all these random encounters that you fight with trainers, you get paid for winning your battles. But if you lose to anyone, you pay them money.
Yeah, you white out effectively and you lose cash.
What? I didn't even notice that. I mean, like I know, like it says, like, oh, you blacked out and you wake up in the gym. They take your money.
Yeah, they rifle through your pockets and
take your money.
Bro. That is hilarious. I never pay attention because I've still got like 27,000 Poke money, whatever. So like I don't even pay attention to how much money.
27,000 is chump change. That is
I think
nothing.
I had about 500,000 by the time I was finished.
Oh my gosh!
At the very end, I had like 200,000 that I was just playing around with. But going on that first gym, I feel that good game design would force me to encounter a Pokemon that is going to be strong against them. Even if my Pokemon isn't leveled up to where he's useful, I think that they should have placed one in my path like a Mankey, but they didn't. And Cory, he told me I had to go to the west of the town.
Yes, you have to you basically have to take the route that will bring you to the Elite Four, and you can't go that way right now because you get blocked off by the gate guard. But you can explore a little patch of grass over there that has a Mankey in it.
And you said it's kind of a rare spawn?
Yeah, it's the uncommon spawn of the 3 things that pop up over there. So you have to like look for, maybe 15 minutes to find it.
See, now
and if you don't know that.
Yeah, if you don't know that, you're just exploring at that point basically, and you're just rifling around looking for one.
That's exactly how I got my Mankey. Like, and I got it right before Sean ran into this problem. So I was like, oh, good thing I already got one. Like, I didn't realize it was that rare, and like I just stumbled across it because I was just exploring at that point.
Now, I will say you don't need Mankey. It just makes your life much easier. I actually used Nidorino with Double Kick to get through Brock because Double Kick's a fighting move as well. So you do have options. But it is poor play on the developer's part because Pikachu doesn't have anything to deal with Brock, and he's your starter. And if you're playing in red and blue or red and green, depending on, which version you have, 2 of the 3 starters are super effective against Brock. Both Bulbasaur and Squirtle completely sweep rock types. And even Charmander with Ember, like, you can still deal pretty significant damage, even though it's not very effective.
At least it's not negated
Yeah,
entirely.
Pikachu is just completely immuned out, and all you have to do is like spam quick attack and hope you don't get murdered before, you really have to out level.
Hope he doesn't one shot you or two shot him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your comment about using double kick. So how is someone supposed to know what type of move something is? I haven't played the game in a little bit since
you didn't look at you didn't look at the manual, the game manual.
It was on the 4th that I beat the game. So I eventually did, but if I'm playing this game blind, like I tried to play initially, how would I know that he's going to get a fighting move or that fighting is effective? Well, actually, I take that back because the manual, which I did look at.
I was kidding. I didn't look at the manual.
The manual does have a diagram.
Yes, the manual has a diagram. I have the original floating around here somewhere. I'll have to take a picture for the Discord. But yeah, the manual does have like a cool little like breakdown inside of it that shows you like all the type effectivenesses. But the more to your point, it is sort of a blind thing on your first playthrough, and it is really meant to encourage you to explore and try different mechanics, I think, because even as a child, I remember like playing through and going like, oh, okay, like I pick Bulbasaur as my starter, and it was like, oh, okay, like Vine Whip is the thing that kills Brock, basically. So I knew I had to get to that point, playing it again and be like, all right, I need this ability first, because otherwise, like, I'm just gonna tackle spam and it's gonna take me nowhere.
And I understand the idea of exploring, but I still feel that first gym is the tutorial, at least in my head, and it should be designed to kind of build up the player, which Yellow is not.
Yeah, and in the original game in general, Brock is actually a pretty big wall as far as like playing the game goes. A lot of people mention that he's the first time like you really start losing and you have to, force yourself to try to get through it again, basically. And in later versions, that's something that gets addressed, where the first gym is not nearly as hard as Brock is.
Well, that's my first complaint. My next is the item limit. It's incredibly small.
Oh yeah, no, I'm with you there.
Yeah, you will quickly max out on the number of items that you can carry or even put into storage.
Yeah, when I had that limit, I'm like, okay, my pockets are full. This sucks. I'm such a small pocket. I'm like in the cartoon, you're a kid carrying around a backpack. How come I can't carry more stuff? But when I started filling up my database or like my computer, I was like, what? Like, you're in a world where you're digitizing everything and storing it in a PC, and you run out of room.
I can understand some limitations of the hardware that it's on, but I think that probably could have been better addressed because there's a finite number of items. But on a similar note, when it comes to capturing Pokemon, you have to have an empty box or really an empty slot within your box. And if your box is full, it doesn't automatically move Pokemon to the next box. You have to go into the PC, open up that box, and be prepared to capture Pokemon. And I didn't discover that till I was in the Safari. And one of the NPCs even warned me. They told me to do it, and I was like, why? What does that matter? And the second Pokemon I tried to capture, I couldn't because my box is full.
Sean, I will mention, I did not realize that my box was full, and I got to Articuno, and I tried catching Articuno, and my box was full.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, this is a colossal waste of time. So I feel your pain on that one. And that's another thing that gets addressed in later games, is that when your box gets full, it automatically switches over to the new box.
So I think that's all of my complaints. And there might be some here and there, but
can I add to that?
Go ahead.
My other complaint, I have no idea what these moves do for the most part. And there's no way of looking up. Like, there's so many moves that, like I said, aren't actually damaging moves. They're status moves or whatever. And I have no idea, like, when you're not in battle, how to see what they are. They are just, like, when I'm trying to, like, put my team together and looking, and plus and fumbling around trying to look at your team and look at stats and stuff is a giant pain in the butt in this game. But the fact that I had no idea like what the moves actually do until I try to go use the move for the first time. And that kind of sucks because like when your Pokemon learns a new move, it says, "Hey, your Pikachu's trying to learn double kick. Do you want to erase one of your other moves to make room for it?" I'm like,
Yes, and
uh,
I would
I
really
don't,
like to expand on this too.
yeah, 'cause I'm like, I don't know. I don't, what move do I want to erase? Like, what am I getting rid of to get rid of something else that I have no idea what either one of them do? So that's kind of just like, took a lot of leap of faith with learning moves and erasing moves and kind of putting teams together too. So that's my complaint. But I also chalk that up to being, it's a Game Boy game. It's very early in the system.
Yeah, so just to kind of elaborate on that, when you level up, it'll say, like you said, it'll be like, oh, Pikachu wants to learn double kick. Which move will you replace, double kick with? Well, if you have these 4 moves, you finally know what they do, and you get double kick. If you've never seen double kick before, you have no idea what double kick does. You don't know what type it is. You don't know if it's physical or special. You don't know how many power points it has, which is the amount of times you can use it before you heal. Like, you don't know any of these factors. And this is probably one of the most frustrating things about Gen 1 is that you're basically going in blind. Even me, I would say a veteran player. I know a lot of these moves. I'm still having to like go on like sarahb.net and being like, okay, like what's the what's the power of double kick? Is it 60? Is it 80? Like, is it better than karate chop? Like I have to, double check these stats to make sure I'm taking the correct thing, because you might take Thunder to replace Thunderbolt on a Pikachu, for example. And Thunder is the stronger move, but Thunderbolt has 100% accuracy. And you have no idea. Even after you take the move, you don't know which one of them hits harder. You don't know which one of them is more accurate. You don't know anything about it. You just know that it says Thunder and it says it has 5 power. So
Yeah.
you don't know that like Thunderbolt's 90, but it's 100% accuracy versus Thunder being 140 power and 70 accuracy. So like those are those hidden stats in Gen 1 that completely drive me crazy.
Yeah.
And in Gen 2, they address a lot of that. So like by the time like Gold and Silver come out, you get a lot more detail. And by Gen 3, like you get to see all that information before you even make a decision, which I think is an excellent example of like them developing the game and making it more user friendly and more,
Ad-
accessible.
yeah, adapting and improving the game.
Yeah, and one of the things that super sucks about this in Gen 1 is that in later versions, there is a move trainer who will allow you to edit and delete your moves. So like if you have, your level 100 Pokemon, you can go to the move trainer and say, I don't want this anymore. I want to relearn this ability. I want to change out this. And he'll allow you to delete things like your HMs, which are your permanent move sets.
You can't get rid of
In
those?
Gen 1,
Cannot.
you cannot
Oh.
change anything. So if you have Pikachu and you give him Cut and Surf or something, he's stuck with those abilities for the remainder of the game. And you basically
Yeah.
waste 2 slots if you don't like those moves. And so as a new player, that could be incredibly frustrating.
Yeah.
And it's not something people run into now with the modern games. As I said, there's a lot of things that they really improve on in the modern era. For example, like now by Sword and Shield, which is like the Switch versions, you don't need to worry about HMs anymore. So like if you want to fly somewhere, there's just an in-game button where you can call like an air taxi. You don't even need to learn the move to do it. So it makes it much more user-friendly in that regard. But in these earlier games, like there's something called like an HM friend where it's like I need to have this guy in my party and he's got all the crappy abilities like flash and strength and all these
I
moves that I don't want to use. And I'm just carrying around this useless 6 Pokemon because it's got all those abilities to like
is
cut
that,
down trees and stuff.
is that what you call it? An
Yeah,
HM friend?
there's another term. But yeah, so basically you have this worthless Pokemon that has all these useless abilities that are more or less useless outside of combat. Like cut is really low damage. Flash doesn't do anything except lower accuracy. Surf, fly, those are good abilities. Strength is kind of mediocre, but they're necessary to like move boulders or get across the map or surf the water, which is like a third of the game. So like you need these abilities and you're kind of forced to have them on certain Pokemon. And if you're using that on your main characters, like you get stuck with those abilities throughout the game and it really sucks. So in later versions, I'm really glad they like address that. And another one of the things is that like in Gen 1, there's no special defense. There's only 5 stats. So you have your attack, your special attack, your speed, and your defense and your hit points. And there's no special defense. So, it's one of those other hidden stats where it's like, I don't know how effective this is going to be. Or, like how weak I am to an ability like Psychic, which is a special attack. And then, you're just kind of having to guess again, which is just one of those other like limitations to this game.
Speaking of limitations, and this was something Chris touched on, that this is a positive I want to talk about. And with the limited space on a Game Boy cart, they had to get creative when it came to including graphics for every single Pokemon, both front and back, as well as the rest of the world, the music, the sounds, and the game content itself. There's just not a ton of space, but they used it so well in the world. There are so many areas that you couldn't access earlier, but as you progress through the game, you may loop around to the side of an area that you were in earlier, but was inaccessible. And I realize that this is a game concept that is commonplace today, but this is the late 80s, and I think they did such an excellent job on such limited hardware.
Yeah, because the original thing did take 6 years to develop. So you're talking 1991, 92, where they started.
I think 1990 when they started. Yeah.
Yeah, because the original game came out in like 97 in Japan.
96. I think it was 96 in Japan, wasn't it?
I'd have to look to make
Okay,
sure.
I may be off in my years.
But yeah, it's still like you're talking about, the original Game Boy.
Just to touch on that, one thing that blew my mind is when I was looking into Satoshi Tajiri.
Which one? Oh, yes.
The guy that came up. Yeah. When he came up with the idea for Pokemon, the Game Boy was already out. Like, he was inspired by watching people play the Game Boy and using link cables.
Yeah,
like,
he thought the link cable system was really cool.
Yeah, like the Game Boy was already out, already popular, already everywhere by the time he came up with this ultra huge, biggest franchise on Game Boy's history.
I will also say, as far as Game Freak goes, they had a title originally. I can't remember the name of it. And then they produced Yoshi and like Mario and Wario for Nintendo. And then after that, they did their first Game Boy game. Like every game Game Freak has done after that has pretty much been Pokemon. So like this really did become their huge, like their baby, basically.
Yeah.
Well, it's their moneymaker.
Well, not only that, but it's like, how like Nintendo, they have other projects, or even, like Sega or, any of these other major companies, they'll have their flagship series, like Ubisoft with Assassin's Creed, and they'll do other stuff on the side. Like as far as Game Freak goes, like they are Pokemon.
They might as well just rename themselves the Pokemon
Well,
Company.
And that's the thing, is they literally made a subsidiary company called the Pokemon Company. So
oh my God, I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
One thing about that link cable that I want to comment on, because I put this in my notes. One thing that I really liked in the game was that they don't explicitly tell you to trade, but in Celadon City in the department store, there's 2 kids with Game Boys, and one is trying to trade for a Graveler, and he's confused when he receives his Pokemon and it's not a Graveler. They don't tell you what it is, but it encourages you, the player, to try trading one to find out that, oh, by trading a Graveler, I get a Golem in return.
Yes. And one of the other things that
neat.
hints at that as well is, that comes up a couple times, because I think his friend is trading a Kadabra and it turns into something else as well.
I think so.
But if you also look at your Pokedex, which is, the list of the Pokemon in the game, they're listed in numerical order. And when you get to Graveler, the space below Graveler will be a bunch of question marks. And you have to figure out, is that a Pokemon on its own, or is that the final evolution? And I'm missing something.
And I did read in some of the buildings, because I was reading posters and books and stuff. There are things that pop up and say, "Hey, try trading Pokemon. Certain Pokemon can
there's
only
all
be evolved
sorts
by
of
trading."
little hints and stuff. There's all sorts of like trainers tips, and
Yeah.
all the bookshelves have little secrets like that, and certain people will, like Sean said, will mention things along that nature. And it's just a very in-depth thing where they're not outwardly saying it, but they're also encouraging it. And by the time you get to like I think the third city, you can go upstairs and you can find like the link cable area, and you can go, oh, okay, like there's this whole section of the game where you can, battle and trade with your friends.
Did we talk about what is it called? I called it the ghost camera. Have we talked about that yet?
I don't believe so.
Oh, the rod.
No, I'm talking about the Pokemon Tower that you have to climb up.
The Sylph Scope?
Oh yeah,
Silph
sorry,
Scope.
the scope. Yeah, not the rod, the scope. Yeah.
It took me forever to find that.
Yeah, several banes of Sean's existence.
Yeah, because that was in Team Rocket's hideout, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
in Celadon.
Which there was nothing hinting you to go there until you were actually like in the little gambling parlor. Which, I mean, can we talk about that too? But
Yeah, you can play little slot machines.
yeah, but yeah, and until how did I? There was a Team Rocket dude standing in front of the poster.
When you get to Celadon City, you get kind of tipped off because there are like Team Rocket goons who have a very specific sprite, and they are just wandering around the town, and they're like, "Yeah, this is Rocket territory, see?" And when you talk to certain people, they'll be like, "Oh, don't touch the poster behind Team Rocket's, gambling corner." Like, they do tip you off on that.
And maybe that was my fault because I didn't talk to NPCs like I should have.
But to be fair, Sean, I found that scope by accident. Nothing tipped me off to find the scope that was in there.
Yeah, nothing says that the scope is downstairs, but it does say like Team Rocket is doing something nefarious. And I think if you go to Silphco, which is in whatever city, Saffron City, you'll see that like Team Rocket is guarding the doors there too. So you're supposed to kind of make that connection, I think.
And I kind of made that later because I actually missed the gym leader in Saffron City. And it wasn't until I had beaten the 7th gym that I went to, what is it? Viridian City is the 8th gym.
Yep.
And I was like, all right, I'm ready to beat the game. And it was still blocked. And I was like, what the hell? What am I missing? And I went back to my menu and I hadn't gotten the 6th gym. And I was like, what am I missing? So fortunately I had Fly, which I was permanently attached to my Pokemon.
Yes.
And I went around
to useful HM.
Definitely. And I went around to every city and I was like, okay, this one still has Team Rocket guys, so it's gotta be here. And that's what kind of clued me into it. But that scope, man, because you need that scope to get to the top of Pokemon Tower to get the Poke Flute to wake up your Snorlax. So you have so many things that are stopping you from progression that without it, you're dead in the water. You can't really move in the game without finding it.
I imagine there were a lot of kids playing this game back when it came out that were just basically stuck at that point and we're just kind of just walking around catching the same Pokemon over and over and over.
I mean, a lot of it was us like talking as children, or like, the Prima official strategy guide came out at some point and everybody was grabbing that. And, this is 99/2000 at this point. So a lot of us, had at least the internet at school. You could go on GameFAQs and look stuff up when nobody's bothering you. But yeah, like a lot of it was like word of mouth where it's like, what do you do to get past this spot? And, it's like, oh, I had to get this thing. And it's like, where did you find that? Like, oh, you got to go here.
I really miss that. And that's why I went to the Discord to ask questions. I got a lot of information from you and from one of our followers as well, Nick.
A couple of people chimed
in.
Yeah. And I love that. I still have that same strategy that you, like when we're playing these games, I don't want to look up a walkthrough. I'd rather pretend like I'm actually asking a friend for advice, like you did back when the game came out.
By the way, I put the original. This is the original, like 1998 Trainer's Guide Handbook, original in-game manual that I still have. If you want to check general chat.
I saw. So, Cory, I've got a little bit more, but this is really the final portion of the game. Is there anything you want to add before we talk about in-game spoilers?
I would just want to say that Pokemon, it is like a children's thing, you know, because it's very family friendly kind of thing. But what I love about this game is how just aggressively in depth it gets, especially in later generations. There is a daycare that you can get to where you can like breed eggs, and you basically can. There's like I was talking about. There's the stats. You know, you have your attack, your defense, your your hit points and everything, your speed. You can basically breed a Pokemon to have perfect effort values, which is to say that like they have the maximum possible stats in each one of those categories, and that their growth rate will also be the maximum amount of growth rate in those categories. So,
Wait.
um,
What do you mean by growth rate? Like
so
they will
when
get
you
more
level up,
experience?
yeah, no. When you level up, you know how like your Pikachu will say, "I had +2 hit points, I had +1 attack, I had +1 special attack, I had +1 speed or whatever."
Yeah.
Every Pokemon has a different growth rate. So your
Oh.
Pikachu is not the same as Chris's Pikachu. It's not the same as my Pikachu. It's a random statistic,
Even the
and
starter one?
even the starter is a random starter every game. So
Huh, neat.
if you open up your Pokemon at level 5 or whatever, your attack might be 88754 or whatever, and Sean's might have been 77685 or something like that. It's all random, and it's in a pool of like, I don't know, 500 different possible categories or something like that. And the optimal value of that is like tens across the board, basically. And so you can actually breed something to have those perfect statistics. And the way you figure that out is by like checking, various guides, and there's like in-game people that in later versions will tell you like your Pokemon has the best attack I've ever seen or something. And you basically can cross breed and train these Pokemon to have like the optimal things. And that's what I was talking about earlier when I was talking about like trading away legendaries. People really don't care about legendaries so much. They care about these maximum stat Pokemon, because when you're playing online and you're playing competitively, you're using your Pokemon in these battles, to climb the leaderboards and stuff, and you want the best possible statistics. So there's guys that'll play this game that'll just like breed shinies with, like 6 of the perfect stats across the board. And they'll trade that away and they'll scoop up like 17 legendaries, and then they'll use that to trade away for other Pokemon. So like there's just this whole big community of people that are like min-maxing and creating like the best statistics. And then beyond that, you can also get certain moves only through breeding. For example, there's a Pokemon called Cloyster. You can breed it to have the ability Skill Link, which makes it so that it always fires a move that has the window of 2 to 5 attacks. It'll always be 5 attacks. So you can have a Cloyster that has Skill Link, and you can give it Icicle Spear, so it always has 5 Icicle Spears, which equals out to like 200 damage. And when you're super effective with ice, it basically like one-shots any dragon that you're fighting against. And it's like this wild, like in-depth sort of insane thing that these people are doing that really like makes this such a crazy fun thing to me, because there are now like over 700 of these Pokemon, and if you create this like perfect little exploitive monster, it becomes just this like niche thing that can just, with the perfect setup, just sweep an entire team. And you know, there are people on like YouTube and stuff that'll like troll people that spam legendaries, and they'll use like a stupid Pokemon like Magikarp or something, and they'll breed it to have like Flamethrower, and then it'll like murder like a guy that has like 6, you know, Zapdos or whatever, and he's like, "How did you do that?" And he's like, "Yo, you suck." You know, like it's just that sort of
I
thing.
think I've seen that guy on
Yeah,
YouTube.
yeah, and it's a lot of fun, but it kind of speaks to how the game is. Like you were talking about, Chris, like you picked the Pokemon that kind of were entertaining to you, and you like caught something stupid that, you know, like you had a Mr. Mime, and you're like, you know, Mr. Mime in Pokemon Go is dumb. It's like, yeah, but Mr. Mime, if used properly, is just this glass cannon that can just completely obliterate people. And like every time I try to play one of these, I always try to use Pokemon that I really don't use that often. And in my playthrough, I had kind of the staples. Like I used a Gyarados, but I used Nidoking, which I really haven't used before. But like I always thought he was a cool Pokemon. And I used Kadabra, which is my homeboy. And then I picked up Charizard, and I'm actually not a big Charizard person. I usually go with Arcanine because I think he's super cool. But it's like this run I used Charizard, and I played with Pikachu the whole way through, and I don't remember what my 6-man was, and that's gonna bother me. But it was something like Sand Slash or somebody, right? Like it was just somebody else that I picked up along the way. And they're Pokemon that I've never used before, but they have certain abilities that make them really effective players. And I use Nidoking, and I used TMs to give him Earthquake, and he had Double Kick, and he had one of the poison abilities, I think. And using those, I completely like swept the Elite Four with Nidoking almost. And my Nidoking was only like 46 when I started, and he was like 51 by the end of the game. And I posted my picture in chat, and Sean was like, "How did you do that?" And it's like, well, you just kind of play to the effectiveness of the Pokemon versus, you know, the people you're fighting against. And I was just thought that whole like type chart just made this such a cool thing to do. And I think that's really why this is like it's still a franchise. It still has such lasting power. And I can get such enjoyment out of playing this like 30-year-old game still, because it does still have that same formula that's really entertaining to me.
And speaking of those Elite Four, I thought they were really challenging until I asked you for some advice on which Pokemon movesets to use. And after that, too easy. I mopped up the rest of the challengers and crushed my rival, which obviously ends the game. And speaking of the end, Chris, there was a comment that you made earlier about how much just kind of an ass that Gary is.
Yeah.
But I'm going to counter that, and maybe you'll see this, maybe you'll feel the same way when you end the game. I think Professor Oak is the absolute asshole.
Oak is a jerk.
Because the moment that he sees Gary, he's like, "I'm disappointed." And he starts berating him. And he says something like, "I heard you beat the Elite Four and I made my way here only to find you were just immediately beaten."
Yeah,
and he
he's
makes
just
some
like,
comments like,
you bring dishonor on the family, son.
he's like, you know why you lost, right? It's like, well, now I know why Gary is the way he is, because his uncle is an asshole.
Grandfather.
Grandfather, whatever.
Yeah,
Whatever. Professor
Gary's just spent the last decade of his life like just trying to impress his grandfather, who just is like, out of the way, you.
Professor Oak is the villain of the Pokemon series.
Screw Giovanni.
Bottom line,
Professor Oak.
Professor
Sean,
Oak.
I have a quick question though.
Yes, sir.
What evolution did your rival have at the end?
He had a Flareon.
Okay, mine ended up being a Jolteon, which
Mine's
think is another.
Jolteon.
So you've seen your rivals now already?
Wait, what do you mean? You mean Gary?
Okay, yeah, Gary. So
Yeah,
you have a Jolteon, but does Gary have a Jolteon?
Yeah, when I beat him in that company building.
Okay, when you beat him in Silphco.
Yeah, he had a Jolteon.
Okay. Yeah, so that's one of the cool things too, is that based on your save file, like your ID, like your kind of unique quote unquote game file, Gary can have one of the 3 evolutions at the end of the game, and you don't know what it's going to be until you see it. So, like, Sean got to fight a Flareon, I fought a Jolteon, and the other possibilities Vaporeon.
Not only that, but some of the combinations of his Pokemon will change.
Yes.
So he will always have a Sandslash, an Alakazam, and an Executor. And then the next 2 can be one of 4 different types, or 2 of 4 different types. The Magneton, Ninetales, Cloyster. Okay, my bad. So only those 3. So it's a combination of 1 or 2 of those 3 Pokemon. And then, like you said, a Vaporeon, Jolteon, or Flareon.
Yeah, and I think that's another one of the cool things about this. And it also kind of lends to replay value, is that, your rival will change at the end, and it sort of gives you one more thing to, if you start a new game and you want to play with new Pokemon, like, you're also going to end up fighting a new rival at the end of it as well.
So post game, I will say that this is when I did start using a guide, because I knew that Mewtwo was in this game and he was able to be captured, and I had my Master Ball. So I 100% went and caught him, but there was a more important discovery to me, not even Mewtwo. Didn't even care about that after I found this out. So this was notes that I had already made after I'd written everything up and beaten the game. There's an item called Nugget, or Nuggets, or whatever. They do nothing. They're just there to be sold off.
Yes.
So when I found an iron, I thought nuggets, gold nuggets, iron ore, they're clearly the same thing.
Oh no.
So I just sold all that crap off. And it wasn't until the very end that I was like, well, it's a defense boost. And then there's stuff like calcium and protein.
So you were selling all your IV boosters?
Oh.
Yeah. So you have iron, you have calcium, you have protein, and they all boost your stats.
You skip past the store, the mega store.
Why couldn't they be called like defense up? Because one of them is called HP up. I knew what that did.
Yeah.
It increased my HP.
And,
made sense.
And I think the reason that they call them, they're the vitamins.
They're
what
vitamins,
the category
yeah.
is. So
yeah, I get that now.
Well, I'm just saying that's what the game calls them, is the vitamins. But I think the reason why they called them like Carbos and Zinc and everything is because there is the X Defend and the X Specials and all that stuff. And I think they wanted to make a specific distinction between those temporary effects and these permanent effects. I think that's why they chose those names.
Mr. Mime got all mine stuff.
I get it. It's a clever way of, saying, oh, they're vitamins, iron and zinc and calcium. Okay. But then you have a nugget, which does nothing. Come on, man.
Wait until you find the star piece in the later game.
I don't know. So I have a question. What did you guys feel to be the worst section of the game?
Brock.
Really? Just the very beginning?
Yeah, because like you said, you're locked in the starter, and he's just a terrible fight, and he's arguably the hardest. He's the biggest wall.
I have never been more frustrated in the Seafoam or Cinnabar Islands. That was I almost quit. I almost just
You
quit.
know what? As a kid, I will say getting through the mansion as a child to try to navigate that cinema mansion, I probably like almost broke. I probably almost broke my Game Boy. By the way, my 6-man was Primate. I just had to go look because I
Oh,
felt
there you go.
bad.
That's
But
a
yeah,
good one.
Primate was another fun one.
So Brock, like I said, I lucked out and had a Mankey right away. My most frustrating part it's got to be Silphco. No, actually
Yeah,
no.
I can see that though.
That one gym that with Sabrina's gym.
Oh, with the invisible walls everywhere.
No,
Oh
not
no, that's the teleporter one. Yeah,
the
Sabrina's
teleporter
gym
one.
Code.
I was
Yeah.
trying not to use a walkthrough, and I had to look up. Well, I mean, I had to look up a walkthrough for Silphco, and then I had to look up the walkthrough through Sabrina's gym because all the teleporters like not even. Sean told me off air that he made a map for it, which I should have done.
If you continue to take, I think it's the top left teleporter, you can eventually suss your way out to it by trial and error.
But yeah, and I shouldn't say. I mean, like those weren't bad. Those were just like the little walk around puzzles or whatever. So it wasn't super frustrating. It's not like I got.
You know what? I also the puzzle for Surge's gym. I probably got hung up there longer than any other like stupid puzzle in the game. I'd like because I kept because you have like a 1 in 4 chance of picking the right one because the first switch is always right next to the second switch. I think I screwed up that like enough times to like just save state, force my way through it.
Oh, I found that right away.
My switch, I literally start on one side of the room because for everybody listening, in order to unlock the door to get to this guy, you have to go through trash cans. There's
like 20 of them.
Yeah, and yeah, apparently you have to find 2 switches, and if you don't do the switches consecutively, they reset. But luckily for me, they were literally. I just started on the left side and was working my way through, and they were both on the very last row, and obviously they were right next to each other. So
yeah, it's like when you beat the gym trainers that are outside of Surge's door, they'll tell you like, "Oh, I heard Surge is super paranoid. He's got switches and cans." And when you beat another one, he's like, Surge's switches are always like right next to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So, those are the hints that you get. Well, I kept clicking a can, and it would be like in the middle of the room. So you have 4 directions, north, south, east, and west, and I would always be picking the wrong direction. And it would always reset the switch, and I got so mad that like I saved the game after I found the first switch, and then if it wasn't the correct one, I was shutting the game off and reloading it at the end to just make sure I got it correctly. Because I tried it like 8 or 9 times, and I was like, nope, I'm not doing this anymore.
I wonder if it was play tested that the switches were in completely opposite or just not next to each other.
Could you imagine being a playtester and having to have like a 1 in 20 guess of like figuring that crap out?
That's what I'm saying. If maybe that was the case,
that would be horrible.
So guys, we've been talking for a very long time now. Do you want to take a break? And when we come back, we'll do our final thoughts?
Yeah.
Welcome back, everybody. This is our final segment where we share our final thoughts on the game. Pokemon Yellow has been an outstanding change of pace for some of the other games that we've been playing so far. And I really, really enjoy it. I can see why this franchise has become the global juggernaut that it is today. The game has a huge sense of scale, especially for a Game Boy game. And the object of the game being to travel and explore and catalog Pokemon instead of the cliche, you're the chosen one and you must defeat this ultimate evil, was really refreshing. Even though some of the later iterations of the game, they do have that big bad trope, I really, really enjoyed the kind of laid back feel of this game where the end of the world wasn't at stake. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the whole Team Rocket subplot is really secondary to you just trying to become like the world champion, and I think that is really refreshing.
And later iterations of this game have so many quality of life improvements that basically make this game kind of unnecessary in my eyes, unless you have a lot of nostalgia for it, which nostalgia is one hell of a drug. And I can absolutely see that because I play a lot of games from my favorite franchises, like Zelda is my favorite, and I love The Adventure of Link, which most people hate. So it was fun to see this glimpse into the history of the franchise, but I personally wouldn't recommend it. I would probably stick with one of the newer Pokemon games, which they've kind of created some problems for themselves. They're at like over 1,000 Pokemon now, and some of them are just ridiculous. There's like a set of car keys, and there's ice cream cone.
The
Hey, the ice
alphabet.
cream cone is legit, all right?
Eh, th-
The lampshade or whatever it is, that one's a different story.
There's one in the newest game. It's like it's a hat.
Yeah,
It's a
well,
hat
I
with
mean, they're
hair.
I mean, you can see in the original 150, a lot of them were inspired by like actual creatures, whether they're like mythological or like, real. And I think they just kind of were running out of ideas as the franchise went on. And they're like, oh man, we got to have a new thing for this game. And it's like, let's make a weird thing.
Here's a bag of trash.
Yeah,
I
there's
think.
literally a garbage bag.
Oh my god, are you kidding me? You
Yeah.
know
No.
what? I'm not even gonna get into it. I think the original 150 or 151 are, for the most part, pretty excellent. There's some outliers here and there that maybe aren't so good this day and
Mr.
age.
Mime is Abomination.
He definitely looks like one, but I don't think he's that bad. Was Jinx one of the original?
Jinx is the original 150.
Yeah, definitely a problematic
Yeah,
Pokemon this day and age.
by the way, the trash man is called Trubbish.
Oh my god. You know what, Chris? What are your final thoughts? Because I don't even want to get started.
I really
adorable.
liked playing it. I am going to finish this one. As far as replayability, yeah, if you have nostalgia for it, great. But instead of if I would recommend somebody else playing it, I'm actually going to refer to Cory, and I want to ask Cory if I want to play a Pokemon game that has the original 151 and kind of get the beginning feeling of Pokemon that is a little bit more polished. What game would I play instead?
Not this one. Um, Honestly, this, is as much fun as it is to go back and play this. And I will say, after playing this, I actually um went ahead and like booted up my Switch and played through like some more Sword and Shield because that's the latest one I have, even though the other ones are out now. Um, I really do love Pokemon, and this really kind of revitalized that like fun, happy time feeling of playing Pokemon. But as far as playing the original games, they've been re-released. Like you can play Let's Go Pikachu or you can play Let's Go Eevee, and you can literally play this game on the Switch with HD graphics, 3D, full color. You can
But
all those
let's
all
go
those
Pikachu. The fighting is totally different, and the random counters are different. I mean, it
well
feels different enough to
there's
me.
certain things that are different, and I mean that's just kind of history, like you can see these things change where the
Yeah,
games evolved. If you want a more um old
traditional Pokemon.
school traditional feeling, you can play for the Game Boy Advance. I believe they did Fire Red and Leaf Green, and that's the original Gen 1 games, and
Cool.
they've been remastered and they're in
And that's
full
what I'm.
color and they still look really nice, but it still has that like overhead 3D sprite kind of look to it, but they're
Then that's
much
what I'm going to
much
go with.
nicer looking.
Thank you.
Cory, what are your thoughts?
I think I kind of just summarized it. I really love this game, but I would not recommend that you play it. It's too it's too janky. It's a beta test, Gen 1. We're trying to figure out what we're doing here.
They're
It
still
it is
spitballing.
Yeah, they're still getting their feet underneath them. It's a really fun game. It's got a lot of issues and it's got a lot of limitations because it is so old. And I think that you can really play through any of the newer games and get the full experience without having all the headache. Like I was talking about, I just picked up Sword and Shield again, And in Sword and Shield, I hadn't played for, I don't know, like a year. And when I picked it up and I looked at my map, there was something in the game that was like, make sure that you go to this town for the next major event. And I was like, oh, okay, like that's what part of the game I'm on with this save file. If I had done that with like my original Game Boy and picked it up and been like sitting outside of, Celadon City or whatever, I would have to go through my badges to figure out what badges I'd have to do. I'd have to like start scrolling through my inventory to make sure I didn't already have like the key items that I needed. Like it would just be a hassle. And, even then I'd have to know like the full game to go, okay, this is my next step. I'd be better off just restarting at that point, like this is just an older kind of outdated version by this point in our history. And unless you're trying to like speed run and set world records, looking at you, Worcester, like there's just no reason to pick up a game like this. It's been revitalized enough by the developers in later iterations that, leave it in the past.
And to grow on top of what I said and also what you just said, the fact that I would not recommend people play this. I did not show this game to my son because I figured, like, just as clunky as this is, like I knew this would just be frustrating for him and he would not enjoy it. So I didn't show this one to him. I showed him Let's Go Pikachu.
Yeah, if you want to show him like an old school kind of Pokemon, like I would recommend like Heart Gold or Soul Silver or Fire Red or Leaf Green. Like those are like right around Gen 3, Gen 4, like when they really started cleaning up the game and fixing a lot of things. Like, for example, in this one, if you want to use Cut on a bush, you have to like go into your Pokemon, scroll down to the guy that has it, and then click the button that says Cut. In the later versions, if you walk up to a bush, you just press A and it goes like, Nidorino, use Cut. And then it cuts the bush away. You don't have to think about it.
Nice.
And you can like set your bicycle as a key item, so you can hit the select key and it'll be like, oh, you're on your bike now. In this one, you have to like scroll into your inventory and go through your bags and find your bike. Like it's really annoying.
They definitely made a lot of quality of life improvements in these later iterations. But was there anything else you wanted to say?
No, Pokemon's still really fun and I enjoy it. Go play Pokemon.
All right, with all that out of the way, everyone out there, you can follow us on Twitter at ReviewBite. We have a Discord server with the link is going to be in the show notes. And if you follow us on our YouTube channel, if you do any of these things, follow us on Twitter, join our server, follow us on YouTube. You can join
Chris vaguely threatening messages or stand ominously outside his window at night.
No, don't do any of that. Don't do any of that.
But by joining, enter you in the contest.
You can join this contest. We've been doing it for several weeks now, and we're going to do 2 more today. We're going to give away 2 more North American Switch codes for either Celeste, Hollow Knight, or Moving Out. I have 3 Celeste codes, 1 Hollow Knight code, and 2 Moving Out codes. So, Chris, who is our first lucky winner?
Henbeast.
Henbeast, I have you on Twitter at a Henbeast, and you're also in our Discord, so I'll be notifying you. And Cory, who's our second winner?
Our second winner is kiwiseli, and they're in the Discord.
Awesome. Congratulations to both of you. So, Henbeast, you were the first person to win, so you get to pick. So if you pick the Hollow Knight code, I'm sorry, Kiwi, that code is going to be off the table. You'll either have to pick a Celeste or a Moving Out. Again, these are North American codes.
Awesome.
Yeah, honestly,
it's
like
a phenomenal
Celeste
game.
Is gorgeous too. So like if you haven't really looked into it, like you should really seriously consider it as one of your picks.
Celeste is so good. It really is.
So all that being said, our next game, guys, is going to be Spyro. Spyro the Dragon for the original PlayStation.
For all of you that have expressed your disappointment.
Yeah, there's been a couple people that have emailed me. Also, we are eventually going to cover Link's Awakening. So there is a Link's Awakening giveaway. It's the physical game for Switch that I'm giving away to someone, whoever does one of those 3 things, and you can get 3 entries. That's by following me on Twitter, joining our Discord, following our YouTube channel.
And since he's got to mail it to you, it's probably stickers in there.
And yep, that was the secret. I wasn't even going to mention it, but I've already put some stickers in there for you as well. So please Do that. I would love to give this game away to a deserving person because Link's Awakening is one of my favorite childhood games, and I cannot wait to talk about it. And hopefully, if you, the winner, are willing, we would like you to join us on the show and tell us a little bit about what it was like for you, either your replay or any memories you may have.
Only if you're cool, though.
That's a caveat. You had to be cool.
Or just come chill with us.
If you want to replace Chris, you have to be cool.
You don't have to. I mean, like, I'm not setting the bar that high, right?
Well, that's true.
Chris, Cory, thank you so much for coming on the show again. This is episode 25. We are climbing up there. We are going to be at 30 before you know it. So thank you so much.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
indulging me on this one. I really had a lot of fun with this one and being a big nerd about it.
I had a lot of fun too, despite some of my gripes.
Well, and they're legitimate gripes, and I think we have discussed at length that like they themselves recognize that and cleaned it up in later versions for the most part.
So I think that's it. Thank you, everyone out there. And until next time, we've been Superannuated Starman.